It's the holiday season, but that didn't stop UCF from hiring a Grinch.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For the first word from the last word on sports is my guy, Andrew Glukov. Andrew, UCF is continuing to make hires. Scott Frost is moving down the list here, getting his staff filled out. We're going to talk about that before we get started, though. I want to recap some of the hires that we've already covered. So earlier in the week, they hired Steve Cooper as offensive coordinator. We talked about his resume. Also, Sean Beckton was retained as wide receivers coach. He was also given the title of associate head coach. So Sean Beckton Sr. retained by Scott Frost. And also, big splash hire. Now, this didn't happen this week, but Mackenzie Milton, fan favorite UCF hometown hero Mackenzie Milton returns to Orlando as the quarterback's coach. Before we get into the new hires, I want to recap really quickly on the hires that he made. You feel good about Mackenzie Milton coming home to UCF?
Well, that was the most natural hire of any that he's done. I mean, the moment that Scott Frost came in, it's like, okay, Mackenzie Milton is going to find a way back. Quarterback's coach made perfect sense. He hit a wall as far as position-wise at Tennessee because Joey Housel is the offensive coordinator and quarterback's coach. So what's Milton going to do? So this was a natural progression. He's actually back in Tennessee, Mackenzie is, coaching, or helping out there as they go through the college football playoff. Very reminiscent to what Scott Frost and his staff did in 2017 when Frost came back and coached UCF to their to end the season. So it's really cool that he's kind of, doing the same thing before he takes on the Knights job, 100%. Sean Beckton being retained is perfect. This is his fourth stint with the Knights. He's a UCF product. He went here back in the, in the old days when Flipper was a minnow, and things have, this is where he's meant to be. He left with Scott Frost to go to Tennessee, kind of spread his wings a little bit, learned a lot, and now he's back, and he's back as a position coach where he belongs. And the associate head coach title is, it just shows how much, how valued he is in this program. And then Cooper's an interesting hire. Was an analyst with Boise State, but he's had a lot of a coordinating experience at the lower level. He has a connection with Scott Frost. As we know, networking is everything. You need a guy who's going to be on the same page as you. And we all know that Scott Frost is the one who's going to be calling the plays. So you need a guy who can kind of work underneath and be able to handle that game planning. And I think that's why Cooper came in, even though he's a little bit of an unconventional offensive coordinator hire.
Let's jump into the current hires here. So this week, news came in. It was a little controversial. It felt like there was some pushback on social media from fans about Alex Grinch being brought on as defensive coordinator. Talk to me about Alex Grinch, Andrew. Before we started recording, you and I talked about his recent history of coaching, but you're talking about a former Broyles semifinalist twice, 2017 and 2019 at Washington State and at Oklahoma. What do you think about Alex Grinch at defensive coordinator?
Well, to give a little background, the Broyles Award is given to the best assistant coach in the country. So even to get as a semifinalist, that's not
something right. Yeah,
it's not easy. He was on the watch list 2 more times, so four watch lists, 2 semifinalist runs. That's not easy. Grinch is definitely a controversial hire based on what people have seen from him, in particular the 2023 USC season, where they started off okay and then the wheels fell off. Just a bad 7-game run led to him being fired with a couple of games left in the season. Just anything and everything that can go wrong did. But the other thing is, you look at, okay, so what's he done since? He's been co-defensive coordinator at Wisconsin, and they've done really well on defense. Their passing numbers, according to Pro Football Focus, 14th in the country as far as defense. So, there's a lot of up and down to Grinch's resume, and because the USC fiasco and was so high profile, that's what people take away. Was Grinch my pick? No, he wasn't. Because it was taking a while, I figured Frost was waiting for Eric Chenander out of Boise State because of how close they were. Obviously, you can't wait. You can only wait so long before you have to move your program on, and sometimes that's the price of success. Boise State's doing really well. They're in the college football playoff. They got a first round bye, so gotta wait. Well, UCF's got to put a team together. They lost over 20 guys to the portal. They have to rebound. The portal's open. They need manpower. And they need help putting things together. There's been openings in their coaching staff. Addison Williams had already left, so that defensive coordinator assistant role was officially open. As far as there was no one even keeping the seat warm. Now, it's also worth mentioning, Mike, that assistant coach contracts don't end when the head coach leaves. They're actually on staff for a little while longer. Usually, I think it's like the end of January is most contracts. And it's because of this stuff. They're still there recruiting. It actually makes it easier to retain coaches like Sean Beck did. And another coach we're going to talk about momentarily. That's why it's easy to retain those guys. They're still under contract. They're still working. That's why during bowl games, you have an assistant step up as an interim head coach when the head coach gets a new job or gets fired or something. So these guys are still, on the ground, trying to do their job while also simultaneously potentially looking for another job. Because these guys, they're also in some ways trying to be retained. Not everyone wants, new head coach comes in. Not everyone wants to quit and find a new job or can. So, your first objective is to try to keep what you got. The last thing you want is to be unemployed. So, you work your contract out. It's a good work ethic thing. Other programs notice this. And if someone calls to hire you away, okay, that's fine. But if not, you want to have a good track record of working to the final, the final gun goes off to be able to put on your resume, say, hey, I did the best I could. I worked until my contract expired. And that kind of work ethic can then lead to another job down the road or even a job with your current institution.
Grinch had a stint at Ohio State sandwiched in there between Washington State and Oklahoma in 2018, where he was the safeties coach and the co-defensive coordinator. Thought that was worth noting. Again, this is a guy who's accomplished some things at this level, at the P4 level or P5 level back when he was coaching there. So we'll see. This is an interesting pick for Scott Frost. Look, we're going to get into his next hire here right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about, Andrew, that you were paying for twice? I don't know.
Yes, I actually have.
Yeah, lots of stuff coming off that old debit card that sometimes we forget about because it's not a great amount of money. That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bill so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com and use Locked On today. Let me say that over. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on and start saving. UCF made another hire here that we're going to talk about, and this was more of a retention. They retained him. They decided to retain Kenny Martin as defensive tackles coach. What do you think about the decision here to retain Kenny Martin?
Very popular, very smart move. Kenny Martin was very successful at UCF. He was very good at recruiting. He helped develop some very good players. Ricky Barber, Lee Hunter, are a couple of guys. He worked with John Walker before he missed this past season due to injury. He's done a lot with this team, and I think this was a really smart keep. There was a number of coaches that were highlighted as really good on the recruiting trail that were worth looking into, and this was one of them. The other one that is still up in the air, Brian Blackman, who's the special teams coordinator. Don't know if he's going to be kept or not, but he's another guy to keep an eye on to see maybe they keep him because of his ability to recruit. So you need those guys who can get out there and have those relationships. So keeping Kenny Martin, very smart decision by Frost.
Yeah. I think it's always interesting when these coaches come through and they look at the old staff. A lot of times you see a lot of turnover and they say, hey, look, I want, my guys in there. I want fresh faces. I don't want anybody part of the old regime. They decided to retain Kenny Martin as defensive tackles coach. Look, he is prior to UCF, he was a defensive tackles coach from 2018 to 2020 for Western Kentucky. And they were one of the most productive units in the country in a release that UCF put out upon his retention. And then he returned to his alma mater in 2016 and worked with the defensive tackles position group for 5 seasons, 2 as a graduate assistant coach. So Kenny Martin retained by Scott Frost. Maybe not reinventing the wheel here. Would you consider this a slam dunk kind of hire for Scott Frost? And when I say slam dunk, I mean more of a kind of like, you know what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's just keep this guy and keep it pushing.
Well, absolutely. And to add on to that, he's an Orlando native. He's from Orlando. He went to Ocoee High School on the west side of town. There's value there. So if you notice, he's been working, as he can. Obviously, not every position works out this way, but he's brought guys who either gone to UCF, have some sort of connection to the area, with Becton, with Milton, and with Martin. These guys all have a connection to the area. And Florida is such a stronghold for recruiting, nationwide. So there's so much talent there. So if you can master the high school recruiting and really get in there, you can use the portal to fill in holes, but unlike Gus's squad, you don't have to be completely reliant on the portal. And that's what the Malzahn administration kind of got stuck in a rut where the development of the high schoolers just wasn't coming along, and they kept having to go into the portal over and over again. And that only works so much as opposed to homegrowing your talent. So I know Frost wants to focus on the homegrown talent. We'll hit the portal hard early on to fix some of these roster holes that have opened up. But I think he's doing a really good job of highlighting the need of guys who have some sort of connection to the Central Florida area.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of like local recruiting, Kenny Martin strikes me as a guy who has roots there and understands, the family dynamic that's down there in Florida, in that area, in the surrounding areas. For so long, and even today, Florida is a recruiting hotbed in college football. As a matter of fact, if we were ranking states that were the best recruiting grounds, I think Florida would be top 5 in terms of recruiting.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, right. So you've got Florida. Obviously, Alabama is a hotbed for recruiting. Texas is a hotbed for recruiting. I would say California is one of those states, and then Georgia as well, too. But, man, how important is it that you have a guy that understands the recruiting landscape down there and can get to work immediately?
Well, I mean, Florida's easily in the top 3 year in, year out with California and Texas. Yeah, without a doubt, as far as number of 5-star talents and all that stuff. And yeah, sure, UCF may struggle to get guys of that caliber. They're still working their way up. However, there's no reason why you can't find good, 3 to 4 star talent in the state. And as we know, stars are subjective, but that comes back to just being able to read talent. And you go down to an IMG Academy or St. Thomas Aquinas, and you're looking at these schools that just can attract talent from all over the place, and they're in your state. That gives you an advantage. And then there's a lot of times where a player will leave, go spend a year at another school, and then decide, you know what, I want to come back. I want my family to come be able to see me play. And so that's what happened with RJ Harvey. Brandon Jacob, who just signed with the Knights, transferred from Maryland. We talked about him. He's officially signed now. Same thing, from the area, went to go to Maryland, and has come back. He wants to be a hometown hero, and a lot of his family to come to his games. As we know, high school recruiting, you get the pomp and circumstance and all the microscope stuff. After they leave for a year and they kind of get a dose of the real world, they realize, maybe that's not all it's cracked up to be. You know what? I care a lot about my family. I want them to see me grow and play, and they come back home. And I think Gus helped. That was one of the things that Gus was pretty good at, was highlighting the desire to come back home. And I think Scott Frost is going to accentuate that rationale by using guys like a Kenny Martin, who's from here, who left and then came back and values what the Orlando area, or even just Florida at large, can offer. Because outside of the Panhandle, you basically, like, 3 hours will take you anywhere from the state of Florida outside of the Keys to Orlando. You can get from even the Miami area, if you drive pretty fast, to towards UCF in about 3 to 3.5 hours. So anyone can come to a game, watch your son play, and I think that has value that they can really sell to not only high school recruits, but even more so to like redshirt freshmen who are looking to go into the transfer portal.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Great retention, I think, for Scott Frost. He's going to move through. He's still got some positions to fill here on the staff. But how is he doing? We're going to talk about how he's done, and maybe even give Scott Frost a grade on these hires here after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF Andrew is brought to you by our friends at the College Football Playoff. I don't know who you have this weekend, but I know that we're going to be watching it here on TNT. It's that time of year. College Football Playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, that UCF should have made it in. It's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st. That's tomorrow, starting with the College Football Playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup with Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on True TV, TBS, and on Max. Also, this episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time, Andrew. Game Time is focused on bringing fans together this holiday. Look, man, I know you like to attend games. I love to attend games. Now, we cover games, but sometimes it's nice to just sit in the stands. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Look, here's how it works. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save on more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. They got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. There's nothing I hate more than getting to check out and finding out I'm paying $50 more than they showed me. They've got a low price guarantee and Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Okay, so how is Scott Frost doing? Well, let's recap. Again, we got Steve Cooper at offensive coordinator, Mackenzie Milton at quarterbacks coach, Sean Beckton at wide receivers coach and associate head coach, Alex Grinch at defensive coordinator, and Kenny Martin was retained as defensive tackles coach. Before we move on, I want to take our listeners back to what Frost said when he got the job. And we covered this on a previous segment, but I think it's so important. I want to cover it again. This is a quote. He said, "There's a lot of pressure to take the Nebraska job. It was hard for me to leave UCF. It was emotional. You know, when you're climbing the ladder of success in life, they forget to tell you to stop when you're happy." That's UCF coach Scott Frost talking about leaving Nebraska and coming home to UCF. How is a happy Scott Frost doing so far with these hires? How would you grade? Give me a grade.
Well, obviously the overall grade's incomplete, but I'd give it a B minus at this point because you have to split it in half. His positional coaches have been an A. Milton, Beckton, Martin, outstanding moves. I'm not sold on his coordinator picks at all. I give that a C. I think Alex Grinch, had a good 2024, but I mean, 23 was so bad. People are still talking about it, and it's still being used. Recency bias has not been able to overcome it yet. So, I mean, that plays a role. And then, I'm a little surprised at the Cooper hire. It's one of those, well, I guess you have to trust the process. Is he a guy that I would have picked? No. I would have gone after someone who had at least group of five, coordinator experience as opposed to an assistant offensive coach, which is really just an analyst. But he has a lot of coordinator experience at the FCS level. Will that convert to, this is Big 12 football where defenses go to die and you need offenses to really light up the scoreboard? I don't know. I'm not totally sold on this. I know Frost has said, I'm calling the plays. It's my, offense is my jam. And so Cooper is kind of going to be, even though he's offense coordinator by name, by function, it's going to be something below that, kind of like what Rhett Lashley was with Gus Malzahn over at Auburn. Lashley left for the offensive coordinator job at UConn, which sounds like a backwards job, but the big difference was at UConn, he got to call plays and actually be a full coordinator. He wasn't a full coordinator with Malzahn because Malzahn ran the offense at Auburn. I think this is the case of the same thing where, Cooper's going to come in, he's going to learn the ropes, but eventually he'll leave for a coordinator job at what seems to be a lower opportunity, but it's going to end up being one where it has more responsibility. So I think this kind of like almost like a keep the seat warm kind of job that Cooper's going to use to find the next opportunity to move up. But I would not call either coordinator hire anything close to a home run hire.
I would agree with you. I would give it a B minus so far. When all is said and done, and after year one, we're going to come back to this, Andrew, and we're going to re-rate these hires based on performance, on how UCF is doing. And of course, again, he's got more staff positions that he's got to fill here. The portal is open. And so the clock is ticking. Guys want to know who they're playing for, who their position coach is going to be. And UCF has a lot of work to do in the portal. Filling out these coaching positions is going to be key to making sure that they maximize their potential in the portal this offseason. Andrew, thanks for joining me today. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
You can catch me on Twitter/X or Blue Sky at StatBoyDrew, and catch my writings on Last Word of College Football, a part of the Last Word on Sports family.
Thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your second listen, go check out our friends at the Locked On Big 12 podcast. Our guy Drake Toll over there leads the conversation in conference realignment news, and he pulls no punches when it comes to talking about every team in the Big 12, including UCF. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.